I occasionally think how quickly our differences worldwide would vanish if we were facing an alien threat from outside this world. And yet I ask you, is not an alien force already among us?
From the gates of Mount Rome to the far corners of the endless highway, wherever you are, welcome to the show.
So you believe in some kind of Armageddon?
Yeah, most definitely. We in the last times and days right now. The Illuminati's in effect.
My guest today studied for years with yogis, monks, and lamas across Asia. He worked with shamans in Mongolia, Nepal, Peru, and Mexico. He's clearly he's a world traveler. He is the director for the Foundation for Shamanic Studies Asia, and he's also an author. His latest book is The Secret Fire of Alchemy. I love that title. Kevin B. Turner, thank you for joining me.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Yes. I was reminded recently that, and this is a thought that just came to me, that Blavatsky traveled extensively all around the world for esoteric teachings.
Yes, she did.
Yeah. And some would say she made all that up. I don't think she did.
I don't think she made it all up. She could have made up some of it.
Some of it, sure.
I don't know. I didn't meet her in this life.
How does that work? Just jumping right into this episode here. How does that work? Do you guys ever cross paths with figures from the past? And I'll ask it like this. I had a very, very real dream once where I was walking through a field at night. It was a very foggy field, and I met Johnny Cash, Jim Morrison, and Jimi Hendrix in this field. They were like apparitions or something. It was like the ghosts in Star Wars, the ghosts of the Jedi in Star Wars. And for years, still, I don't know what that dream meant, but I felt like maybe I met those guys.
Well, shamans would say that there is no limit to consciousness, that we can know anything outside of time and space. And mystics would say that our consciousness is part of the universal consciousness. Atman equals Brahman. The individual soul and the universal soul have always been one. It's just that the individual soul or the Atmic soul believes it's separate, like a raindrop may believe it's separate from the ocean, but all rain returns to the ocean eventually. So in that sense, I would say it's possible to contact any incarnation from any period of time.
I think so too.
I don't know about your dream, but you may have touched upon something.
Yes. At the time, I was a very active musician, and I was about to have a career as a musician. So, the timing and everything. But I don't want to talk about me and my dream. But I want to tap you for information.
Yeah, but I think it's a good way to start because shamans rely on the spirits also for creative inspiration. So the Greeks relied on the 9 muses to inspire them for creative endeavors. So music is one of them. So it is quite possible that you were seeking at some level or another creative inspiration from those who have incarnated before.
Yes.
Contacted them where they are still alive.
And
Shamans would say that's strange at all. That they would consider that almost normal.
Yes. Have you had an experience like that?
Of course.
Yeah.
I teach them.
Yes.
Yes. So in the advanced training that I do in Bali, Indonesia, we regularly consult beings of great creative potential from the past to inspire us in the present.
I'm finding everything you've said so far very profound. I could tell you've studied a lot. And I knew that was the case, but you know, you wear it around you like an aura, and I mean that in a as a compliment. And when it comes to shamanism, it comes up quite a bit in my research, and I'm always wanting to know and have more information on the topic. But I'm not just a researcher. I'm a believer that this is a spiritual realm and that we can interact with that on a daily basis. And I think it's just
Yeah,
more potent for some of us. And
sure.
especially if you're actively trying to engage with it on a daily basis. But, you know, how did you find yourself in the study and pursuit of shamanism in the first place?
Well, I would say I probably started this about 400 years ago. But I'm glad you brought up music because I think shamanic practice is very similar to music in the sense that every human being can learn to play music at some level or another, even if it's just a very beginner's level, because we're all human beings. All human beings have some level of musical talent, and then all human beings have some level of shamanic talent. So the soul naturally journeys at night. In our deep sleep, the soul is not inactive. Shamans could easily tell you, or yogis, lamas, swamis as well, can tell you that our consciousness is very active in deep sleep. That the shaman is aware of this and can actually enter these states, the shamanic state of consciousness, usually known as the theta brainwave pattern, can actively operate in these levels. So shamans are actively operating in spiritual realities. I would say these are objective spiritual realities, but they are always subjectively described. And so that's why we have this big variety of spiritual traditions and religions and what have you. The good thing about shamanism is that just like with music, everyone can learn to shamanically journey, everyone can learn to do some basic shamanic healing. But only a few, of course, will become the platinum record producers. Only a few will play in Carnegie Hall. Only a few will become, great composers through history. So the same with shamans. There'll only be a few shamans that will go down in history because they performed the major miracles and they made big changes in their societies. Many shamans, even though they perform miracles every day, they're little known and they are only well known in their tribal groups.
I'm fascinated with the Native American shamans as well. I have this book here. I don't know. Have you ever heard of Black Elk Speaks or Black
Oh,
Elk?
very much so. I talk about Black Elk quite a bit in my courses.
This book changed my paradigm
He
because
was a shaman prophet.
yes, what I realized when I read this was that I didn't have a well because of when I was born, because of the time that we're in. Um, I guess I didn't have a good grasp on the spiritual nature of this realm. So this was like reading something fictional at first for me. But I had the notion in the back of my mind that there was some truth to it. So I had to read it twice. And the second time I read it, I was much more open-minded to what he was saying and the stories that he was conveying. And so it really spoke to me to the point where now it's sad to look around at people in the grocery store or people at a mall or people in public in general and see how devoid of spirituality they are, how out of touch
Mm.
everybody is.
Yeah. Well, the new spirituality is technology. The new God is money and technology. So
Yeah.
even though it has given us lots of conveniences. I mean, we're having this conversation right now without having to take a boat all the way to Indonesia to do it. So there are some advantages, but I think it's becoming in some ways more difficult to follow a spiritual path if we are constantly distracted by
Mm.
too much information. Too many things going on. I mean, 24/7 on the internet, YouTube,
Yeah.
on and on and on. But
Yeah.
Black Elk is a wonderful example of someone who was brought onto the spiritual path through a near-death experience. As I recall, I read the book decades ago, but as I recall, he was 9 years old. He kind of went into a coma for about
Mhm.
4 days, and he was pretty close to the door of death. And the spirits took him into the skies, into the shamanic realms, and they showed him the future and the past of not only for him, but for his people and for the larger history of North America. And that's why, and he wasn't even able to conceptualize this because he was only 9 years old. So he kind of sat on it for a couple of years until he was old enough to start to talk about it. But when he returned, he was glowing with spirit, glowing with power. And people recognized that he had had what they might call a shamanic initiation dream, which is probably another term for a near death experience. And he came back with knowledge. So shamans are often described as those who know. So belief plays very little a part in shamanism because it's active knowledge of spiritual realities. And doing healing divination is entering into those spiritual realities with intention, with purpose, to do service for the larger good of the tribe, of the society.
Yeah, and you nailed that story. And I've read it again somewhat recently, so I'll fill in a couple gaps there. It's not that you missed anything; it's just that uh, you told the main story there. But I will add this: when he was 5, he was out playing alone, and he said he heard voices
Mhm.
calling him. He thought it was his mom calling him, and he found out it wasn't his mom. But then nothing happened, and again, like you said, until he was 9, and that's when he got sick and he was in the coma. And but it's almost as if this path chose him.
Yes, well, I think the same thing with very talented musicians. They're
Yes.
called to music at an early age. It was the same for me from age of 4. I stayed awake through the deep sleep states. And so it took me until probably I was 9 or 10 to tell the difference between lucid dreams, regular dreams, out of body experiences, middle world shamanic journeying, because at that young age, I had no way to conceptualize. I couldn't tell the difference between ordinary reality and non ordinary reality. This starts to happen when we become around 7 years old and we go through brain function lateralization. So after 7 is when most people can start to conceptualize things. So I would say at ages 3, 4, 5, it's common for all of us to be hearing voices, to be perceiving multidimensional reality. My own son used to go to the foyer and talk to beings in the door, near the door into our flat, and he'd say, "You're not supposed to be here. Who are you?" And there's nobody there. So, I mean, he was perceiving somebody passing by, and he'd go tell them that this is our house. Why are you here?
Hmm. Hmm.
It was very interesting.
Yeah, yeah, and I believe it. I mean, I didn't have anything that potent as a kid, but my stuffed animals were like friends to me, and I've often
Mm.
wondered about that. And,
I talk, yeah, go
oh, go
ahead.
ahead. Oh,
I
that's
talk
it.
quite a I talk quite a bit about kids and guardian spirits because in many religious spiritual traditions we talk about children are born with a pair of guardian angels. Well, that's very shamanic. In shamanism, it is said that the children come into this world with at least a guardian spirit or two, and they usually appear as animals, whether they are the spirit of the species of that animal or some other reason that they appear as an animal. It's hard to say. Tribes have different ideas about this, but all children connect to animals. They want stuffed animals. They want to hear stories about animals. They feel close to animals. If you talk to a 4-year-old about Buddha or Jesus, are they interested? No. But you, but
No.
you but if you want to tell them the story of what the crow said to the fox and what the fox said to the bear, they're very interested. They want to go to the zoo. They want to play with the cat and the dog.
Mm.
So I would say that children are, all of us as children, were very much in touch with our guardian spirits. And then what happens when we're 5, 6, 7? We're sent off to the concrete box.
School.
School, to be programmed to be good little citizens. And we can't take our stuffed animals with us. And we're told to pay attention to the book and the teacher and not to daydream anymore, off into multidimensional reality. And so this begins to then shut down for most of us, and me too, to some degree. Some part of it, though, remained awake for me.
Yeah, yeah. When you go into school, I remember having this feeling, even though it was such a long time ago, you go in and you realize that it's like the music stops. It's like the fun's over. It's you know, your your
Yeah.
programming hits you like a brick wall. The intention of programming even it hits you like a brick wall.
Mm.
I remember
Well,
that.
Rudolf Steiner recognized this as well, and that's why the Waldorf schools or the Steiner education system is to not introduce any kind of brain lateralization activities like too much rational thought, too much mathematics, too much grammar at an early age, because the children are still in the whole brain uh, hemispheric synchronization stage until about 7. From 7, you can start talking a little bit about grammar and mathematics and logical thinking. But prior to that, stories, music, games, art, artistic creation, that's what's the best education for young children. I would agree.
Yes, yes. And I see it in real time right now with my niece. She's not 7 yet. She's close, but she's not there yet. And everything, it's like you're saying, there's a fascination with animals. There's a fascination with comic book characters, I think like superpowers and that sort of thing. It's all fantasy type stuff that and it's great. Like we try to facilitate that. And she talks about how her stuffed animals talk to her, and like I'll ask her what did they say and all this and that. So it seems like it's a natural progression to being a human. And
Well,
we don't need to suck that out of them too early or
that's right.
yeah.
That's what we can keep it alive. And what we call fantasy, the shamans would say, is more real than this illusion. That this is the illusion of contracted consciousness, that children are still in an expanded state of consciousness. I saw the most curious thing. It was beautiful. I was landing on a flight in southern Thailand, and we stood up, but they didn't open the plane doors. And there was a father and a mother and their 2-year-old daughter. And the 2-year-old daughter was screaming, crying, just screaming, crying, and nothing that the parents could do could calm her down. Nothing was satisfactory. And then the father, I was just watching this as we're standing there getting hotter and hotter on the tarmac. And the father got an idea, and he reached in a backpack and he brought out a stuffed animal, and he gave it to the 2-year-old daughter. Immediately, everything was fine. Now, we might think, okay, that's a cute story. But if we think about it from shamanic terms, how is it that the mother and the father, the two closest persons to her, aren't good enough? How is it that the stuffed animal gave her a feeling more of security than her own parents did? Well, from a shamanic point of view, she knew her guardian spirits before she was born. That's the world she came from before being born into this world. So the parents are the newbies. They're the new people. Her guardian spirits are the previous ones. And that stuffed animal, of course, is not the guardian spirit, but represents that world, that state of consciousness that she came from recently. And at 2 years old, of course, she's just starting to talk. And so once we start talking, we start to tune out other realities. And most of us begin to lose our natural telepathy
Yeah. Yeah.
once we start talking.
Yeah, there's something about being young and I mean I remember the first time I ever saw Star Wars, and it's pretty good story actually because I found it on my own. That was part of the best. This was the best part. Like I think it was like a Thanksgiving day. Um, and my family were all out in the yard, and I stayed inside and so I could watch TV because my uncles weren't in there, so I to hog the remote. And I was flipping through channels, and I came across Star Wars, and it was the scene of Jabba's palace, and I was like, "What is this?" First time seeing it as a kid, and I watched and I learned about the characters and stuff, and I learned what a Jedi was. And at a young age, I had a deep sense that that was actually possible.
Hmm.
And it
I
wasn't
had it.
until much later that I realized, oh, the world doesn't think so.
Yeah, I would say that especially the first two films that came out in 1976 and 1978. I saw both of those films when I was 15 and 17, and then I went to Germany as an exchange student in high school just for a summer. But during that summer, being freed from my environment, being freed from my language, being freed from my culture, I was in a new culture in a new place where nobody knew me. Then all the telekinetic abilities and talents just came out very suddenly. And I believe that the first two Star Wars films actually opened the door to that possibility because I think it's suppressed. It's something that we all have, certainly something that shamans demonstrate all the time. Dr. Michael Harner asks two questions to determine whether someone is a shaman or not, and that is, do they journey to other worlds in an altered state of consciousness, and do they perform miracles? So these telekinetic or psychokinetic, you can say, miracles started to occur around me, especially with metal or electronics. And I thought, what is going on? So that sent me on an immediate exploration of what is happening spiritually to me. So that is described to some degree in this book.
Hmm.
And this is my previous book, Sky Shamans of Mongolia, about Mongolian shamanism.
It's as if you were activated,
Yes.
or you were on, it was the perfect thing to happen at the time that it did. It was, you were on your path already, and things that met you on your path activated you.
Hmm. Well, it is also interesting that I was drawn to go to Germany at 17 on a student exchange because several of my previous incarnations, which I later discovered, I was a German speaker in at least three previous incarnations, and that's also described in the book. So, the Secret Fire of Alchemy, I go on through alchemical initiations in my deep sleep. And then I go to India and Japan, and I come to Asia. I've now been in Asia for 40 years, not
Okay.
14, 40
40.
years. I can hardly believe it. 4 decades here. Seems
Yes.
like yesterday. Anyway, I came here and I met Yogananda's guru's last living disciple, was initiated into Kriya Yoga. Then I studied with a Lama, Sharmarpa, in the Himalayas. And then I studied with Taoist alchemists as well, and finally put it kind of all together to discover that Kriya Yoga, the one of Yogananda, if you're familiar with the autobiography of a yogi, that is the essence of Kundalini Yoga. It's the essence of Dumo, the heat yoga of the Tibetans. It's also the essence of Taoist alchemy. And what I later discovered was Western alchemy, Western spiritual alchemy is also this. It's all internal. So yes, there is a metallurgy. Yes, there is are spagyrics. Yes, there are tinctures. There is pharmaceutical, uh, chemical um, uh, alchemy as well. But I'm talking about spiritual alchemy.
Maybe Carl Jung.
Well, Carl Jung, I think, knew more about spiritual alchemy than he let on. But he was a doctor. He was a psychiatrist. He was an MD and a psychologist, and he had a reputation to protect.
Sure.
I think he recognized that there was an internal transformation going on, actually psychophysiological change. And so that's why he was so excited to find the secret of the golden flower, because which is mentioned also in my book. And he was so excited to find that because that talks about the internal vessel, the secret vessel, the secret um, container, and that is the hermetically sealed cave of Brahma, which is where the egg, the alchemical egg is. It's in the center of the head. This is where the transformation goes on. Now, the head is also If you're familiar with the term Golgotha or
Yes.
Golgotha, that is where Jesus was crucified. But Golgotha means skull, the place of the skull. This is where the crucifixion takes place, is here. It's all symbolic. Whether he hung on a wood or not doesn't really matter. This is the cross. This
Mm.
is with the internal crucifixion. It is the sacrifice of the shaman for the sins, for the health, I should say, of his community.
Yes, I've heard also that it was also symbolic. The crucifixion was symbolic in the sense that yes, he's on the middle of this rock or this skull, and it represents the two hemispheres of the brain as well.
Mhm.
The like I guess maybe the merging or the harmony between the two.
Yeah, that's the alchemical marriage.
Mm.
Is actually the center of the brain. This is the gate of God, is between the two hemispheres. All through alchemy, you'll see the male and the female, and they've always got the red and the white, et cetera, et cetera. It's called Yab Yum,
Mm.
the father mother. This integration of the masculine and feminine occurs at two glands in the center of the head in the hermetically sealed vessel. This is the alchemical vessel that has been talked about, but it's been lost and it's been obscured now for centuries. And now there are materialists who are saying there never was a spiritual alchemy. There's nothing but metallurgy, there's nothing but chemistry, and we have a magic pill. If you pay us enough money, we'll give you the pill and solve all your problems. Now, this is a dark alchemy,
Yes.
sometimes useful, but limited in its view.
Well, it's funny you mention that because we're talking about school, and the same guy that brought the pill over here to the forefront in the West, at least, was Rockefeller. And he also had a big hand in the schooling system. So it seems like one guy was responsible for both. But it was a
Now,
it's
we
a dark
could
mindset, you
go
know.
down a dark road, yes. Well,
Yeah.
this is materialism. I mean, there's autonomic forces, you can say. This is Rudolf Steiner's also thought that Ahrimanic forces, especially in this century, are working very hard to hold human consciousness down to matter, down to machines. And you can see it everywhere. Everywhere you look, everybody's become a zombie. They're just looking at their phone. There's very little human contact anymore. So, our tools, as in 2001 Odyssey, Space Odyssey, the HAL 9000 computer
Yes.
may decide that we are irrelevant and no longer necessary.
Yes, the AI showing up in that movie in 1968 or 69, for me
Yeah,
that was very Steiner-like because he died in I don't know, it's either 23 or 1923 or 24 or something like that. It's when Steiner died.
1925.
25,
Yeah.
okay. So and he's talking about this coming age of technology. He's talking about the age of science coming. He says all this stuff's going to happen in a time where science is no longer looked at as theory, but truth.
Yeah.
And it's like, where was this guy getting his information from? So maybe now we're back at shamanism.
Well, I would say so. But also, there's a deep connection between the Rosicrucians of Europe, who were highly secretive, and the Kriya yogis of Babaji, Lahiri Mahasaya, Sri Yukteswar, Yogananda, and my teacher, Hariharananda, who was the last living disciple of Sri Yukteswar. So he was a brother disciple of Yogananda. But there's a deep connection between them because Sri Yukteswar and the European Rosicrucians came up with exactly the same date for the end of the Kali Yuga, and that was 1899. Now, interestingly enough, Planck, or Max Planck, came up with a term, and it slips my mind now. It's called a Planck of time. It's the shortest possible time conceivable. Now, this is very interesting that on the exact same year, 1899, that you've got Sri Yukteswar, you've got the Rosicrucians, later Rudolf Steiner as well, and Max Planck all coming up with this time paradigm shift in 1899. And that apparently we are now in the Dwapara Yuga, which it means we are ascending. We are actually coming out of the darkest times. But that doesn't mean there won't be some resistance from what and shamans might call middle world forces. Middle world forces want to hold us to materiality, want to hold the human soul into a limited space when
Yes.
our natural space is to be unlimited.
I love that. I do. 1899. And wasn't that around the time where you had Blavatsky talking about the golden age, the coming
Yes.
golden age?
Yes, I think that Blavatsky was highly intuitive, and I think she brought. I don't know that much about her, but I think she brought in a huge amount of information and intuitively arranged it according to her own filters. So now we can look back on it after 120 something years and say, well, there's a few limitations there. Well, yes, we are all human beings. We all have our limitations. We all have a middle world personality that the information comes through. So that cannot be avoided. And the moment you put information into a language, it comes along with a history and a culture and a background and its limitations.
The middle world, is that anything like, I don't know, Middle Earth in Lord of the Rings?
Absolutely. Middle Earth comes from Midgard, which is the Yggdrasil, the world tree of the Scandinavians. But this is actually all the way across Eurasia and is discussed in depth in Sky Shamans of Mongolia, my other book previously published. Midgard, Asgard, you may have heard if you've seen the recent Marvel films. Asgard is the upper world, Midgard is the middle world. Well, in shamanism, the middle world is where we are. We are in the middle world right now. And this is the pain world. This is samsara. This is the world of illusion, confusion, conflict, and competition. But it's also the school of hard knocks. We have an opportunity to learn things here that we can't learn in the transcendent realms where everybody gets what they need. So here we don't always get what we need. And so it gives us interesting opportunities for growth. I mean, some people would say that this is the hellish realm. Yes, this is the realm of suffering. In Buddhism, what's the first law of Buddhism? All of life is suffering. And
Yes.
suffering is caused by desire, desiring something that we feel that we don't have. Well, if we're in the upper or lower worlds, those are transcendent realms, we get what we need. So there is a lack of desire. So they are not suffering. So they're called the heavenly realms, paradise, the happy hunting ground.
It seems like everything here is achieved through struggle.
Indeed. And yet, because it's so hard here to bring Holy Spirit, so to speak, from the transcendent realms into this one is the biggest challenge of all. So a lot of spiritual lineages are all about let's get out of here. Let's just get this realm's all suffering, it's all hellish. Let's just end it and let's escape into the transcendent realms. Yes, that is one point of view. Certainly the Gnostics took the point of view that there's good and evil, and it's very much the matrix kind of mentality, and that is that we're souls trapped on Earth, and we have to escape. That is one point of view, and it's valid. But I would say the more transcendent point of view is to not just escape, but to actually return and bring transcendent power for healing, for service, for divination into this realm, which is what the shamans do. Shamans are the intermediaries, the original intermediaries. Shamanism is the earliest expression of human spirituality. I mean, we're talking about not 10,000 years, not 20,000 years, not 30,000 years. We're talking about 70,000 years, 100,000 years. Going back to whenever modern humans existed, and maybe even before modern humans, there was some level because shamans were interacting in spiritual worlds, and they were able to describe it to the rest of the group and the tribe, and to bring back power from these levels for healing, for divination. It's how we survived. I mean, we probably would not have survived without the shamans. The shamans can go outside the box. They can get information outside of the normal five physical senses. And in our modern realm, outside of beyond the left brain, beyond the rational mind. So they've been helping us survive. And I think right now we need shamanism more than we've ever needed it. Because right now the left brain is no longer a tool, it's become our masters and is just about to take over. And we've never needed shamanism more than now.
The shamans here in North America were certainly liaisons between worlds or between spiritual planes or however you want to word it. I mean, there are some of the wildest stories about shamans interacting with wendigos and I'm trying to remember the other ones, Mantaloo or something like that. One other spirit, but I've seen some of the wildest stories with that, where the shamans have to battle wendigos to defend the tribe, defend a whole settlement of people.
Mhm.
And it's
Wetty.
just it's like, well, now that the shamans are gone, who
Well,
what are those forces doing? Who are they bothering now? Where are they?
Well, yes, we are lacking shamans. I wouldn't say they're gone. They still exist, especially indigenous shamans, but they're on a very small scale. So it's part of my work and my mission is to carry on the work of Mircea Eliade, Michael Harner, and others who are bringing shamanism back to the modern world. So we're teaching a universal shamanism rather than a tribal, what we call a cultural shamanism.
Hmm.
Cultural shamanisms we highly respect, and in fact, that's who we learn from. But what I'm teaching is what's called core shamanism, developed by Michael Harner. And he was an anthropologist. You've probably heard of him. He lived in the Amazon. He was doing his PhD work for Berkeley, living with the fierce people, the Shuar, also known as the Jivaro. And that's where he came in touch with shamanism. And he not only became fascinated with it, he experienced it firsthand. And then what he had always thought was subjective, he realized were actual objective spiritual realities because the shamans knew more about his experiences than he did and described very similar things. Of course, we do experience it subjectively. So that turned his whole world upside down, and he went on to study shamans all over the world for another 50 years and distilling the common techniques that shamans do all around the world into a system called core shamanism, which is not neo shamanism. Neo shamanism is where people have stolen mythologies, rituals, ceremonies from indigenous tribes and kind of stirred it in a pot, and they're just selling it out as neo shamanism. This is can be very disrespectful to indigenous peoples if they were not.
That sounds like some magic books that I've come across where it's that cauldron of many different older ideas. Maybe they're not meant to be taken and put with other ideas.
It depends. I mean, there are many I would call master shamans who say master two systems first, then you know how to combine them. But especially here in Bali, we have so many persons who just start several different paths. They've hardly started them, and they're already combining them and marketing them. It's unfortunate.
Mhm.
There's no depth.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, what do you think about individuals like Crowley? Do you think he was doing that sort of a thing?
Well, the Western magical tradition is what I would call middle world shamanism, and Dr. Harner would probably also call it that. That's basically about getting magical power here in the middle world for your own advantage.
Personal
Um,
gain, yeah.
Yeah, personal gain. I mean, the high road of shamanism is the sacrifice of the shaman. The shaman sacrifices at least a portion of their personal lives, at least some time, for the betterment of their society. So, I mean, we could translate that into shamans die for the sins of their community. That would be a very Christian way to look at it. But shamans go through ritual deaths, near-death experiences, or death-like states where they travel into the spiritual spheres and then they come back with the wisdom and the power for their society. If they hold it for themselves, would be considered a sorcerer. So Crowley would be a sorcerer. It was mostly service to self. It was do whatever you want. And if anybody has a problem with that, it's their problem. And that's not a very compassionate point of view.
Right. Whereas the individual we talked about earlier, Black Elk, he would go on to become more of a helper to his people, but he did have that near death experience where he traveled. And he talks about that in the book, how he when he was
Yeah.
laying in this teepee sick for days on end, he went up into the sky. He rode on a little cloud and he met what he called the grandfathers, and they
Yeah.
imparted wisdom to him.
Yes. Well, this is the wisdom. See, whenever I meet middle world sorcerers and magicians, I feel a bit sorry because in shamanism we consider middle world sorcery a kind of suicide because it's a limited point of view. Anytime you're using magical abilities to take advantage of other people here in the middle world, you're setting yourself up for well, for lack of a better word, a karmic kickback. So these persons do not have the larger point of view. They need to learn shamanic journeying, get to the transcendent spheres, get outside of the box of this pain world, this confused world. And when they look back, they feel tremendous compassion for those suffering in the middle world. So for those who have near-death experiences, most of them don't want to come back because the transcendent realms are so beautiful, so full of love, so full of light, so full of wonder that nobody wants to come back to this realm of confusion and suffering and conflict. And so the middle world magicians are just going to make it more difficult at the time of their death when they do depart because this monkey we're dragging around has an expiry date. We're not taking it with us. It's going to return to the earth and the spirit's going to go on, and the middle world sorcerers are going to have to face the music of what they have done, the short-sightedness. I mean, I love chocolate cake, so I'm going to eat a whole chocolate cake. Oh, I feel sick, but I'm going to eat another one because I just want the taste. But I'm eating more and more and more. My tongue loves it, but I'm getting sicker and sicker. This is middle world shamanism. It's a blindness, and ego makes us blind.
Yeah, and it brings up that old argument of light versus dark, or maybe I should put it like this, like it was kind of presented in Star Wars. There's a force and there's a light side and a dark side. What are your
Well, there are,
thoughts on that?
yeah.
Did Star Wars get it right in that regard?
Yes, I mean, many things are very accurate in terms of kind of the warrior shaman path. And that is that, um, okay, Darth Vader is the perfect example of great power and very little compassion, if any at all. And so that's turning to the dark side. It's a very contracted state of consciousness, and it's an exclusionary state of consciousness. Others don't matter. I or me and my group matter more. So this is a contracted state of consciousness. We would say the dark side, contracted. And this is my wallet. This is my lunch. Get away from me, whatever. The expanded state of consciousness is inclusive. And that's what we call love. That's when we feel that everybody's our brother and sister. We're all in this together. And that's where we feel natural compassion for the suffering of others. So it's not a forced thing. It's not like religious teaching us you should be good, you should be compassionate, but rather in an expanded state of consciousness, or I would say the real shamanic state of consciousness is inclusive. Then love, morality, compassion, ethics, it's all just natural to that state of consciousness.
Yeah. Yeah, wow. Well said. I've got to throw this one at you because I'm just curious about your thoughts on this. Have you heard of the coronavisor? It was there was a
Corona.
priest, a
Mhm.
Catholic priest who put out a book a couple years back about a project that he allegedly worked on for the Catholic Church. The Vatican commissioned it. Apparently, they brought in von Braun, and his name slips me, but he was a very prominent Italian inventor. But they brought in all these big names of science, and they
Marconi,
were
probably.
who was it?
Marconi?
I think it may, yeah, that sounds right. Yes. Is it Emmanuel Marconi or something like that?
I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So they
he,
could go ahead. Sorry. What were we saying?
no, go on, go on.
Okay.
Marconi would have been very elderly at the time, but yes.
Yeah, it was him or maybe a protege of his or something like that. But anyway, Von Braun, I know he was one of the names there, but they were trying to hardwire shamanism, in my opinion.
Mhm.
And they had rigged up like a TV with it looked like some sort of something that Tesla would have, put together. It was just wacky technology. And and it looked like it was trying to get electricity from the ether or something. But anyway, they were trying to go back in time and view important people from the past, like Jesus.
Mhm.
And I
Oh,
just thought it's one of the craziest stories.
I'm not familiar with that particular story, but I worked with the Monroe Institute for 20 years. I was a residential trainer there. And if you're familiar with remote viewing, a lot of the remote viewing training was done at the Monroe Institute. And Robert Monroe had classified clearance to train the 001 remote viewer, Joseph McMonigal, who I worked with at Monroe Institute for 15 years. And so that was psychic spying. And it's basically shamanism under a scientific protocol. It was very middle world. I mean, it was considering the Soviet Union the enemy. And so it was focused on spying on Soviet assets, etc. This can be used, of course, and we have a technology which is essentially the binaural brainwave uh, work, which is done, which is Monroe was the grandfather of all the binaural brainwave meditation CDs that came out, oh, some 20 years ago, 30 years ago. Well, Monroe was working with that back in the 1970s. And he was trying to train people to have out of body experiences, which is the same as middle world journeying. So I went
Mhm.
there in 2000 as a student. I became an outreach trainer in 2003, and then I became a full residential trainer in 2006. So I'm taught there for 14 years. And then in 2020 or 2020, I was just too busy teaching shamanism here in Asia to continue to fly back to Virginia to teach at the Monroe Institute. But it's fascinating. We teach people out of body experience, afterlife exploration, even exploration into the stars in the out of body state or the middle world shamanic journeying state, as well as remote viewing. So we don't, of course, we don't train people to spy with it, but remote viewing more as realizing that our consciousness is limitless.
Yeah. I've been telling people for a long time now, years now, that remote viewing is real. And I think that that how put off interview with Joe Rogan recently will hopefully help in the broader acceptance of that. It felt like a win when I saw that. But, what was your experience with remote viewing?
Um, I started remote viewing training, oh, back in maybe 20 years ago or so. So I have been a paid remote viewer. I have worked on police projects. I have not worked for three-letter agencies, but the
Okay.
people that trained me were retired from those three-letter government agencies. And so I did, again, have the opportunity to work on police projects. It's interesting work. Can't give the details about it, but FBI remote viewers, for example, they search for serial killers. CIA, it's mostly overseas work. But the Air Force, Army intelligence, they all had remote viewing units and probably still do, although they're very buried now.
Well,
They're
that was
still,
going to be my question. It's like it seems
yeah,
as if those programs are still alive and well, right?
absolutely. Skip Atwater, who was my boss at the Monroe Institute, he was chief of operations and training for the Stargate Unit, the psychic spy unit. He's now retired, so he doesn't have his finger on the pulse. He's no longer going to the Pentagon and things on a regular basis, but he knows all those folks and he assumes that all those programs are still going. But when they were talked about or exposed back in the late 70s, early 80s, and in 95 was when it was really declassified. Uh, they had to say, oh yeah, well, we experimented with that and it doesn't work, and now we don't do it anymore, and hush hush, and everything was swept under the rug, and all the project names were changed to other names, so they don't use Stargate anymore, or Grill Flame, or Sunstreak, or any of those old names
Yeah.
anymore.
It's all out there for people. You can look for it.
Yeah,
You'll find it.
not a conspiracy theory. I mean,
That's right.
I know many of those guys personally. At least three-star former Stargate members trained me, and then there are others that I'm in contact with. So it's not a conspiracy theory. It's very real. It's all declassified. Anybody can find out about it.
Yeah.
And and even though Wikipedia gives this idiotic nonsense story about that it never worked, it absolutely worked. It was operational for 30 years. I mean, they were getting operational data. I mean, it was, of course, nothing is 100%. No, nothing in spying is. But
Yes. Oh, I remember
I just
years ago.
laugh. Yeah.
Yeah, when I looked into this years ago, I came across a project that ran for 20 years. It's, you can see it, the documents are right there in front of you, and it says the project ran for 20 years. And it's like, and meanwhile, what you're saying, the internet, the public narrative, the Wikipedias, they're all telling you that it didn't work. Well, why did they do it for 20 years? Why'd
Yeah.
they put money into it for that long?
Oh, 30 years, and it's still going.
Yeah.
I mean, Lynn Buchanan, just before the Stargate unit was closed, Lynn Buchanan's was sent a recruit directly from CIA with the name Lieutenant John Smith, which was obviously not his real name. Trained him every single day for 6 months, said he was hands down the best remote viewer he had ever seen in his life. At the end of the 6 months, he disappeared back to CIA, has never been heard from again. And then they closed Stargate and said, there are no remote viewing projects anymore. Well, we can only assume that, of course, it's continuing. And the KGB were doing this, and MI6 as well. And of course, the Chinese have their own psychic spy units. I mean, this is not even speculation anymore. I mean, this is
Yeah. If it worked
anyway.
once, if it worked once, and it gave the government or somebody at the Pentagon or what have you some valuable information about Russia or China or what have you. If it worked once, they're going to try to achieve it over and over again. And
Well,
of course, we know now it worked many, many times.
Well, Joe McMoneagle was the 001. I mean, not the 007, but the 001 psychic spy for 20 years. And he's given talks all over. So if you want to know what the real remote viewing was about, Joseph McMoneagle, he's all over YouTube now. And he still teaches at the Monroe Institute. And he's not getting any younger. If you want to study with him, better get to Monroe soon.
Yeah. Yeah. And I even like that Third Eye Spies documentary. I'll
Oh,
put that out
very
there for
well done.
people.
One of the best ones. Yeah.
Yeah, that was a big one for me back years and years ago when I saw that. That was a big one for me. But I guess the ticket here, whether you have spiritual reasons or spiritual objectives or more like you're doing something for your boss at the CIA, I suppose, the ticket here is astral travel or accessing the astral realm. Am I correct?
Well, I would call that the non-ordinary reality of the shamanic worlds.
Okay.
Yeah, astral
Mhm.
is another term for it. Yep. So shamans would call the middle world has say that the middle world has two aspects to it: ordinary reality, which is what we call physical reality, and non-ordinary reality, which is what we would call the astral plane middle world. So the astral plane middle world can also have all kinds of mixed agendas, all kinds of mixed purposes. So there can be beings in the middle world that don't have bodies, that have their own agendas, and they are not all compassionate. So just because a spirit comes to you in the middle world doesn't mean, just because it doesn't have a body, doesn't mean that it's wiser than you.
Hmm.
That's why in classical shamanism, we journey to the upper world, we journey to the lower world, we get out of the middle world, because the middle world, again, is the confused world full of agendas and conflicts. Uh, and then we come back. Once we know the spirits in the upper and lower worlds, we can invoke them, we can call them here. So that's like calling an angel, calling a power animal to come here. But sorcerers have to work with middle world spirits. They are other spirits also stuck in the middle world, sort of as we are. We're not really stuck, but there's an illusion of stuckness here. They just don't have bodies anymore. And so they can be hired like mercenaries, and that's where sorcery comes from. So sorcerers have to work with middle world spirits because transcendent spirits refuse to work with them because they're not doing compassionate acts. Their service to self, or in the case of Castaneda, I mean, Don Juan, he was the warrior path, really. He was just the path of freedom. I'm not gonna answer to anybody. I'm gonna do whatever I want. I can live off the land. And he had the magic and the power. And Don Juan was a real person. There's some argument about whether he ever existed, and maybe Castaneda made him up. No, I mean, he was a real person. I've seen photographs of him. I mean, my teacher knew Castaneda personally. In fact, he was instrumental in getting Castaneda's books published. Michael Harner, if it, without Michael Harner said, go back and see Don Juan, ask him what to do. And Don Juan carved 3 masks and attached middle world spirits to them because Don Juan was a sorcerer. He didn't call himself a shaman. He called himself a brujo, a sorcerer. And he was a middle world shaman.
Hmm.
It was all about freedom and do whatever you want. It was not about compassion, healing, and service. Now, I wouldn't say that Don Juan was necessarily an evil person. He just was independent. He wanted to go his own way. He didn't answer to anybody. So that's kind of the warrior path. And
Yes.
those 3 masks, Michael Harner, I mean, his wife, Dr. Sandra Harner, still has the mask. I've seen it. I don't know where Castaneda's mask is. And the 3rd mask went to the publisher of the first book, The Teachings of Don Juan, A Yaqui Way of Knowledge. And mysteriously, the book that nobody wanted to publish was suddenly published. So there
Oh,
was a bit of middle world magic involved in getting that published because it was too freaky at the time. And my God, this guy goes to Mexico and does a bunch of drugs and comes back, and back in 1963 wanted to print that book.
wow. I had never heard that before. That's something else.
Yeah, that's the backstory that most people don't know.
Yeah, I haven't. I didn't know that. Well, wow. Do you see, this, I'm starting to see more and more information like this come to the surface. Actually, it's sometimes on a weekly basis, I'll get a very interesting backstory on something that's very, very deep, very metaphysical, very spiritual. Do you see that we're living in a time where this information is coming out? And I'll use
Yeah.
that word again. Did a metaphysical dam break? Or is this destiny, timing, or Kali Yuga? What do you think?
Yes, well, there is a greater need now, and that's what I wrote in the preface in my book. In the prologue, I say there is a greater need. And so this is why I finally published The Secret Fire of Alchemy after withholding the information for 30 years. Finally published it. I never thought I would, but I thought I cannot leave this world. I'm no longer a young fellow. See this white beard here? You'll see, you'll be surprised how fast it happens. Mine was like yours, not just yesterday. And suddenly, bang, so I mean, my
Yeah.
time in this world is limited, and I cannot leave without this information being published. So
Mm.
the Secret Fire of Alchemy is revealing some things that haven't really been discussed before in the way that I discuss them.
Yes. Um, I do want to ask you about supernatural experiences.
Sure.
I'd love to hear if you've had any, and my assumption is that you have. And in fact, I did.
It's my whole life.
Yes. Okay. So, um, and I did hear you on an interview say something about coming across ghost monks in Japan, but you don't necessarily have to tell me that. I'm just curious about your supernatural stories in general.
Well, I mean, that's my life's work.
Hmm.
That's been going on for me since 4 years old. But uh, the book starts with age 21, where I start to undergo in-depth initiations in my deep sleep. And that's where spirits came to me, took me backwards through time, through space, showed me other worlds. It took many years for me to piece it together. One of the reasons I went to Asia was because I felt that Western spirituality was insufficient. And in the late 70s and early 80s, it just wasn't widespread enough, or at least I didn't have contact with it. So my first goal was to get to the Himalayas, especially after reading Yogananda's book and a few others, because I felt that they had the answers, and in many ways, they do. So I went to Sri Yukteswar's ashram. I went to other ashrams and monasteries, and I ended up studying with the Shamar Rinpoche, who is a leading Tibetan Lama, and in Nagi Gompa in the Himalayas in Nepal, outside of Tibet, because Tibet is not really free right now to practice as they wish to. So the entire book is supernatural experiences from beginning to end. In fact, both my books are supernatural experiences from beginning to end. So I'm not sure where to start because that's what I teach. And in fact, I just ended just a few days ago, still a little tired, a 3-year program in advanced shamanic initiations where these kinds of spiritual experiences are not just daily, they're all day long, every day throughout the entire 6-week program.
I'll be more narrow with my question. I've had I've encountered spirits before, and I won't regale everybody with the stories, but I have encountered spirits before. Have you encountered?
Yeah, of course. Well, in fact, shamanism is called the science of spirits. So the shamans work with spirits. All shamans work with spirits. And so these are in core shamanism that I practice. I have trained in other shamanisms, Mayan shamanism, Tamang shamanism, Nepalese shamanism, Tibetan shamanism, Mongolian shamanism. But in the core shamanism that I practice, we work with and encounter transcendent spirits every day, and I invoke them here on a regular basis, almost every day, to do healing, to do divination.
Mm.
Now, when I was teaching remote viewing, Dr. Herner wasn't very thrilled with it because remote viewing was devised for spying, and spying is, from a shamanic point of view, considered a kind of sorcery. Now,
Yes.
I was teaching it because it was about human potential, human consciousness potential. That was my interest. I wasn't concerned with spying on other people. Um, uh, or using it to make money or anything like that. So, but I gave up on it because I wanted to do the purely compassionate work of
Yeah.
healing and divination. And then Kriya
Mm.
Yoga, of course, ultimately leads to nirvana, the nirvikalpi samadhi, and that is the transcendence, and where you can finish up in one lifetime. So you can go into the breathless, pulseless state and graduate from Earth School. That's what everything Yogananda said it was. It is.
Graduate from Earth's school. Mm.
Earth, Earth Hologram School. Yes.
Yeah, I love that. That's so accurate. That's so accurate. Yeah, and I was trying to articulate that earlier about the remote viewing and aspects of it being it's created for spying or whatnot. I didn't know we were even going to talk about remote viewing today because I don't see anything spiritual to it. But
Well, it
I don't
is
know.
in the sense that there's no limit to consciousness.
Sure.
I mean, the remote viewers were able to remote view the planets, other stars, systems, and
I
even
mean,
the
I mean,
four.
like spiritual reasoning, or
Oh, yeah.
yeah. I
Well,
should have articulated that better.
viewing could be used. I mean, shamans are using clairvoyance every day in terms of spiritual diagnosis. So when I do a shamanic diagnosis, that's a kind of remote viewing. In other words, I'm perceiving non-ordinary reality. I'm perceiving what does my client need spiritually. So I'm not a doctor. I don't prescribe drugs. I don't do medical procedures, but I do shamanic diagnosis. And I ask my transcendent helping spirits, my all compassionate helping spirits. You can call them angels, bodhisattvas, what have you. And I ask them, what does my client need? And they say, well, they need They need this. They need some things, negative things need to be removed. Some positive power needs to be returned to them. They've lost a guardian spirit. They need to have a guardian spirit retrieved for them because they lost touch with them when they were a kid. And so that is in a nutshell what shamanic uh, healing is. There's also divination, which is helping the client know what they need to know from outside the box. Um, so clients can always search the internet. Clients can always use their five physical senses, their left brain, to try to calculate what they need to know. But there's a limit to that. So the shaman can stretch consciousness outside the box to get information outside of time and space for a client to know so the client can make their own decisions.
Back to the shamanic healing that you
Mhm.
mentioned there. Now, because I booked you so quickly, I haven't had time to read your work yet. Normally I do. Normally I book people a month out, so I have time to familiarize. But I was able to briefly browse Sky Shamans of Mongolia, and I saw that you had a healing experience there.
Mhm.
I don't know, would you be open
When
to
I
talking
when I
about
received,
that?
sure, when I received a healing or I was doing healing.
It received.
Oh yes, well I received several, but there was one where by a Buryat shaman. Buryatia is in Siberia, but there are many Buryats living in Mongolia as well over the border. Buryatia is a republic in the Russian Federation. It's the one that is around Lake Baikal, the deepest lake in the world in Siberia.
Mm.
It's also the largest volume of water in any lake in the world. It's so deep. It's many times deeper than any of the Great Lakes in North America. Anyway, so she uses a whip to do extraction, and so she calls in the spirits enter her, the spirits enter the whip, and together they actually strike, and they're able to drive out spiritual intrusions with the whip. So spiritual intrusions are, you can call them astral beings. We say non-ordinary reality. Intrusions, there can be parasitic types, there can be dart types. Darts are sent by other human beings. If somebody gets angry, jealous, envious of you, they can send darts. And we say, oh, that person scowled at me and sent me bad vibes. Well, the shamans consider those real. In Mongolia, they consider slander, gossip to be a kind of dart, a kind of sorcery. So that can be removed. There's also parasitic intrusions, which are middle world. They are not ghosts of dead termites. They're not ghosts of dead mosquitoes. They're not ghosts of dead uh, cockroaches, but they are similar in the sense that they're looking for a free lunch. They want to enter your power field and they want to live off your life force. So these are non-ordinary reality spiritual intrusions, and people feel them, but they don't show up in blood tests. They don't show up in X-rays. But the shaman can use their, for lack of a better word, remote viewing skills or their shamanic X-ray perception to be able to perceive these intrusions and remove them. Now, in the case of the Buryat shaman, there was an intrusion on my back. She told me to lean down, pull off my shirt, and she cracked the whip right at the place where I had pain. And the moment it hit, that intrusion was gone, and I never had pain there again. So it was quite a
Mm.
miraculous healing. And I
Mm.
didn't tell her anything about it. I just said, yeah, I have some pain in my back. I didn't tell her where, but the whip struck directly where it was needed.
Was that, did you know in that moment that you had been healed or what?
Well, the pain left,
Mm.
but I didn't know that it would remain gone because there was certainly a sting from the whip.
Sure.
So at the moment, I was like, what's going on? But I've received healings from Tibetan shamans as well, Nepalese shamans, Tamang shamans. And so, in fact, that's one of the best ways to build a rapport with an indigenous shaman is to show the respect and ask them for a healing or a divination. If you that then when they do that for you, they realize, okay, you respect what I'm doing, you honor what I'm doing, and then they might answer some questions.
Oh, I see. I see. But and just going back to that story for just a second, you're still to this day healed from that
Yes,
experience? Wow.
yes,
Hmm.
yes. So, I mean, there are shamanic healings that sometimes they come and go. There are shamans that remove cancers, remove tumors, et cetera, et cetera. Sometimes it's permanent and forever. Sometimes it comes back. I mean, the universe is a mysterious place. I do know another shaman lives in Hawaii. There was a Mexican guy with cancer, and the Hawaiian shaman removed the cancer 7 times, but it kept coming back. So we don't know why this happens. It could be that the client didn't change their lifestyle, continued on with their same unhealthy lifestyle, so the cancer came back. It could be karmic. It could be that person needed the lessons learned from suffering. Most of us learn through suffering rather than through wisdom.
Hmm.
And so for many of us, illness, pain, accidents have been our greatest teachers, even though they're very uncomfortable.
Yeah. I've got to ask too, what is the doppelganger experience?
The doppelganger experience is truly a mysterious one, and it's been known through history, and shamans are also known to have their doppelgangers appear in different places. And there is a chapter in my new book, The Secret Fire of Alchemy, called Doppelganger or Doppelganger. And that talks about the Lama doppelganger that I saw, but I have seen shamanic doppelgangers as well. And my own students see my doppelganger every now and then appearing, pointing to something, trying to indicate something.
Okay.
I would say that this is part of the multidimensionality of consciousness. When a person, I think it could happen to anybody, but when they reach a certain level of spiritual realization, we're operating in multiple dimensions, and the physical realm is not actually completely physical, as any physicist can tell you. That actually what we think of as physical reality is actually a kind of dream. It's really
Yeah.
just a wavering thought form that condensed into light, and light is condensed into matter. But this is all a kind of imagination, a kind of dream. And so at a certain state of consciousness, this can be altered. So I have experienced Indian masters, Tibetan masters physically appear and disappear, as well as shamans. I know that's probably hard for your listeners to grasp at the moment, but it has been known through history. It's still happening today. It's not something that only happened thousands of years ago.
But my listeners can handle it. Did what was because trust me, with
I hope
this
so.
show, some of the places this show goes, they can handle it. What happened to you? Could you tell me about one of those experiences? You mentioned your llama. You
Mhm.
saw your llama's doppelganger.
Yes, I was returning to Nagi Gompa in the Himalayas to see him, and when I arrived, he wasn't there. And I was feeling, oh my gosh, he must be back in Kathmandu. So I packed my bag and was going to go down the hill to see if he was at Swayambunat, which is another one of his monasteries. But
Mm.
suddenly he appeared up the hill on these outside steps, and he's waving at me with this kind of silly smile and silly face, which was uncharacteristic for him, but he was really trying to get my attention. So I stopped, and then he suddenly came down the stairs very quickly and went into the kitchen behind the monastery. And I ran into the kitchen, and there's only one door in and one door out, and he wasn't in there. And I said, "Well, I just saw Shamarpa," and Shamarpa has a very distinctive appearance. And so I just saw Shamarpa enter here, and they said, "No, we don't. He's not here. He hasn't returned yet." So I was delayed just enough that when I went down the mountain, that I met him at the road, or just coming up from the road. Now, if I had gone earlier, I would have missed him. He would have gone up and I would still be going down. So I was
Mhm.
delayed just enough so that I would not miss him. Now, that's typical of a doppelganger from a teacher. They give you some information. It's kind of a synchronistic information, and it's usually silent, and they're often seen above, looking down and waving or indicating something. It's very common. Now, human beings can have this too. This sometimes people will doze off and they'll have a like a mild, what I would call awareness away from the body experience, where they might see themselves sitting at the desk. Or an old history teacher of mine once said that he was out jogging and he had run an incredible distance, I mean, several miles, and he went into kind of an altered state and suddenly saw himself running from behind. So all of these are variations of a spectrum of consciousness that we can explore quite freely. The soul is free.
I'm wondering, and I'm thinking about the story you just told me, if that was just something truly unexplainable and it's just this enigma, the doppelganger experience is just an enigma, or if that was your llama, I don't know, for lack of a better term, like playing around and messing with you, like biolocating or something. Like,
Well, kind of, except that we would have missed each other on
yeah,
the
okay, good point.
down. So he had a purpose for it. He wanted to prevent me from going down too early, because then I would have missed him. I would have gone all the way back to Kathmandu and probably missed him for several days, and I had to turn right around. So
Yeah.
his doppelganger prevented me from leaving. But the remote viewers also had experiences of doppelgangers. Doppelganger means double body or double goer in German. Uh, and many are unaware of their doppelgangers. Goethe, I write about Goethe's doppelganger as well. He was riding along one night uh, back in 18 something, and he was going to tell his fiancee or his girlfriend that he wasn't ready to get married. He was just felt he was too young, wanted to see the world. And he's riding along and he sees in his mind's eye, although it's projected out, he sees himself older and wearing this gray jacket with kind of gold lace and certain like gray green gold buttons or something very specific. And he thought it was the strangest thing because he doesn't own that jacket.
Ah, okay.
And he thought, oh my God, I'm going crazy. I'm seeing myself, ride the other way on a horse. And then it disappears and he goes there. But 8 years later, he goes back to see his ex-fiancée to visit her just to say hello. And suddenly he realizes he is wearing that jacket, that this pike green jacket with the gold buttons or something, and which he did not own at the time.
Okay.
And
Wow.
so outside of time and space is a little hard to explain, but I mean,
Hmm.
great spiritual masters can physically appear and disappear. That's a very high level. That's not something that happens very often.
I heard
Uh,
a story concerning that to do with Falconelli once as well. That
yep.
he, I don't know if you know the story. I don't remember it well enough to tell it probably, but that he was teaching a guy and he disappeared on the guy, but he returned um, as a different in a different form even. I think he became a woman at one point and returned to his student.
I don't know that story. No.
Okay. But I've heard about it. Like he wasn't just apparently he wasn't just an alchemist. He was able to do these shamanic activities as well. Maybe
Well,
they're all the same.
I was going to say that at the depth of spiritual alchemy, it is the same.
Okay.
Spiritual alchemy is Kriya Yoga. Spiritual alchemy is Dumo, the heat yoga. It is the internal transformation. It's actually using the physical body as a vessel for soul percolation, soul incubation, for the transformation of the soul from lead into gold. Now, the external alchemists, also called puffers because they're blowing oxygen on the fires because they're actually trying to turn lead into gold at a physical level. So
Hmm.
the puffers is a derogatory term for those who think alchemy is only physical because they don't have the initiations. And my heart really goes out to these Western esoteric scholars who have done a tremendous amount of research, and I so respect their research. And they're coming to these conclusions that, oh, spiritual alchemy is just fantasy. It never really existed, but they have not been initiated in the internal experiences. They don't have the internal initiations. So no matter how much you study, you cannot understand what they're referring to when they're talking about antimony and mercury and the hermetically sealed vessel. It, it's here, but they don't know. And so I can't blame them. I can't get angry with them. I can't argue with them. They simply don't know. But the
Mercury
yogi,
is a code for something to do with the brain, perhaps, or
well, it is. And if you're initiated, you know what it is.
okay, I
Uh,
see.
So the Taoist alchemists know, the Indian alchemists know, at least if they're deep enough into it. But the information in the West was mostly lost. Now, the Egyptians surely had it. Then, see, the psychophysiological transformation that goes on inside the body, which the Chinese are really experts at, uh, the wonderful analogy of it is metals, because metals are something unique. And metal is also, interestingly enough, the most susceptible or most vulnerable to psychokinetic effect. So metals really are an interesting analogy because metals do change. Metals transform when you make amalgams and things. So metallurgy is a great analogy for what's going on inside the body. But the ordinary reality mercury is extremely poisonous and should not have anything, has really nothing to do with spiritual alchemy. Spiritual alchemy is an
Hmm.
internally produced thing. In India, they call it the Amrita. Amrita is what's produced, and that's why people live longer than normal, because the Amrita keeps them young.
Yeah.
The elixir of the fountain of youth, in a sense. That's another reason why yogis live unusual lengths of time. And Babaji is supposedly 300 years old. Even my teacher, I saw pictures of him when he was in his 50s. He barely looked 30. And so this may also be why many of the biblical figures were living 700 years, 900 years,
Mm.
because they were living as we were originally designed to be. And now, I mean, to watch cable TV and eat potato chips doesn't require the brain size that we have. So we are not living up to our potential. Something has been lost,
Yes.
and
Yes.
we need to return to it.
I agree. The 9 to 5 zombies. Nobody's pushing themselves. Nobody's. I'm with you. And you said the biblical people, and I don't remember how long Solomon lived, but I was going to ask, what about Solomon? The Keys of Solomon. What do you think was
Well,
going on there? Was he
Solomon,
shamanic?
I'm not an expert on Solomonic magic, but as I understand it, Solomon was a master magician. He was a very great middle world shaman, at least, maybe also a transcendental shaman. I'm not sure. But I mean, Solomon's magic, he was able to use or make use of middle world spirits as servants. So, and he used certain Hebraic mantras in order to keep in Arabic, they're called the jinn. The jinn are the genies in the bottle. So you could literally control these middle world spirits to do your bidding. Now, fortunately, he was extremely wise and we hope very compassionate. So he was probably using a lot of middle world magic, and it didn't seem to get a hold of him. So I would compare him to the modern version of him as Gandalf,
Yes.
uh, Gandalf the Gray, and then later Gandalf the White. But even Gandalf refused to hold the ring. Gandalf refused to take the ring
Mhm.
because the ring is middle world power, and
Didn't Solomon receive a ring? Isn't that part of the story that he was presented a ring from somebody or something in this hierarchy of entities, like angels, archangels, seraphim, Elohim, somewhere
well,
in the hierarchy, I think he was presented a
if you
ring.
in shamanism, at least, if you can demonstrate your level of compassion, your level of ethics, yeah, then the angels they will bestow upon you the power that you deserve. If you don't deserve it, they take it.
Well, that's the story of Isis that I read, at least the one that was accounted by Zosimos of Alexandria. He said that
Yeah.
she was talking to angels, and that's how she came into the sphere of learning how to do alchemy.
Yes, that is classic shamanism.
And it read like a shaman
Hmm.
experience, a shamanic
Zosimos was
experience.
even dismembered.
What's that? I'm sorry.
Zosimos was dismembered.
Hmm.
Dismemberment is a classic shamanic initiation. Uh, you're not physically dismembered, of
Right.
course. You go into the upper world or the lower world, or you're taken to it in a dream, and there's no pain involved at all, but you're completely taken down. So it is essentially a spiritual upgrade. Uh, it's a software upgrade, you could say. The physical body looks the same when you return, but internally, your internal psychic circuitry has been upgraded. And in fact, in many shamanic traditions, they rank the power of a shaman by how many dismemberments they have received from the spirits. So it's a little bit similar to, let's say you upgrade the software on your laptop to 2.0 or 3.0, whatever, what have you. The laptop, there's no pain involved. The laptop doesn't cry and squeal when you upgrade the software, and the laptop looks the same, but the laptop with the upgrade presumably is more powerful. So shamans are able to contain more cosmic power, more healing power from the helping spirits if they've been upgraded. So this is the path of shamanism, and where shamanism and alchemy overlap, because it's constant upgrading of your system internally. Again, Obi-Wan Kenobi looks just the same on the outside, but he's not. He has a tremendous capacity to hold power because he's been internally changed. But
Yes.
it, but again, the spiritual masters, they look just like normal human beings. They are not. They have been internally changed, alchemically changed, shamanically changed. They've been upgraded psychically.
Yes, I'm thinking about the story of Merlin. I think he was called Murden, but he was a Welshman from 450 AD, and something happened. He went deep into the woods where he began to develop psychic powers and prophecy.
Mhm.
And when he emerged from the woods, he was changed. Like you say, it was different. It reminds me of this. You brought up Gandalf, this wizard thing or this hermit thing. Seems like you have to go
Yeah.
through a transformation, and it takes stepping outside of this your current world or your current comfort zone for a little bit, for some time.
Yes, well, that's what spiritual retreats do. So you have to withdraw from the world for a while
Mm,
and to be upgraded to another way of being.
yes.
And that could be a whole other conversation.
Yes, yes. Before I let you go today, I got to ask you something, and I'm not going to go into too much depth about why I'm asking you this. I'll just say this: I've got friends who are podcasters, and I was told to ask you about your 9/11 story, where you were at on 9/11, and your 9/11 story.
I have no particular opinion on 9/11.
Yes, but
You
where were
mean
you
my
at?
9/11 story? Oh,
Yes.
I was in Egypt at the time. Oh, I see what you mean. I have a good friend who did a lot of remote viewing about 9/11, and I thought that's what you were referring to. Oh, yes, I was floating down the Nile on a boat, and I felt this strange wave go over the gray sky, like a subspace disturbance, Captain, if you're a Star Trek
Mm,
fan.
mm,
And I thought, what is this? And I just felt this depression, and it was coming from the northwest. And I thought, what is that? Something coming from Europe. And so I sat out on the front of the boat and just meditating, and the rest of the people on the boat, they were drinking beer and dancing or something. And this is a 3, 4 day trip down the Nile. So I didn't know what it was, but there was a disturbance in the force, so to speak. Had no idea what it was. I thought, okay, I'll just forget about it. The next day, we stopped. An Egyptian man came out with an Arabic newspaper and pointed at this small photo. There were these two towers, and a little mosquito nearby. And I thought, what is that? It looks like the two towers in New York. And what's that little tiny thing? It looks like a plane must have maybe hit it. And why he was so upset, I didn't know why, because I didn't speak Arabic, and he was going on and on. And we got back in the boat, and it was 2 days later with no information, no mobile phones, nothing. This was, of course, September 10th, or no, that's September 12th or 13th at this point, 2001. And we finally arrived at Luxor, and then everybody knew, of course, what it was. And so my feeling was that when the news came, it went to Europe. It was very early in the morning in Europe, and I'm sorry, it was in the afternoon in Europe, because Europe was later than the States. And so it was in the morning when the planes hit. So when the news hit Europe in the afternoon, it was the people's consciousness of seeing those towers come down over and over and over on the news was that wave across the front, across the sky, as I was sitting at the front of the boat.
Rolling in like a dark cloud.
Yeah, so then I decided to leave the Middle East because I didn't know what was going to happen. Everybody was afraid that Bush was going to, carpet bomb the Middle East, and I thought, okay, I think I'll get out of here and go back to Asia. So I went to back to Vienna to catch my flight. But before I went back to Vienna, I decided that I would go back to the Great Pyramid and that I would not leave the main chamber in the Great Pyramid until I understood what it was for. And so I went in, and again, it was packed with tourists, and I thought, oh my God, this is not what I want. I want to have some kind of spiritual experience here. There's got to be something more, because there's no evidence that there was ever any pharaoh buried there. There's nothing of that type of evidence. So what I did was I finally got frustrated, and I leaned against the wall and I slid down, and I just sat in meditation with my eyes closed. And very slowly, it was packed with tourists. And this was what they call the king's chamber, but there was no king ever found there. Anyway, it's kind of the main chamber. And people looked at me, but very slowly, all around the room, people started sliding down against the walls, because many people were there also seeking some kind of internal experience. So suddenly, after a little while, and I'm kind of opening one eye and opening the other and looking around, and I see that all the walls are there's people sliding down, sitting in silence with their eyes closed. And the other tourists got kind of spooked, and they left. So we're sitting there for a while, and I set my intention again. I am not leaving until I know what this pyramid is for. Why was it built? So one by one, everybody's leaving, and I just stay, and I stay, and I stay, and I stay until nobody is left, and I'm alone. About 2 hours went by, and of course, you can't tell whether it's day or night because there's no windows. And I thought, oh boy, they must have closed by now. And I said, okay, if I get locked in, I'm going to spend the night here. I'm not leaving until I know why this is built. So then I heard somebody coming, and a guard came and poked me. And I opened one eye, and he said, get in. I said, what? He said, get in. Well, there's this initiation chamber that they call a sarcophagus. And so I got in. And then in Secret Fire 2, I will describe what happened.
Perfect. Oh,
How's that
that's a good
segue into the sequel?
yes, I love that. Perfect cliffhanger. Well done, sir. What a story. What a story. Thank you for coming on today, spending some time with me. Thank you for
Thank you,
just,
Tim. It was
you know,
good. I love to talk about these things. So it was a lot of fun. Thank you,
great.
Tim.
Yes, and I love to hear about them. So that worked out. Tell everyone where they can find you, where they can find your
Oh, yeah.
work, and any projects you want them to know about.
Well, www.shamanism-asia.com. Again, www.shamanism-asia.com. And here are my two books. You can also just look up Kevin Turner, Shamanism Asia. My website will come up. And these are my two books. And there's a sequel to this one coming, which will talk about Egypt and 9/11.
Great, great. I'll have to have you on, and we'll talk about that down the road. But again, thank you again, and as always, break the mold, conquer the realm, and thanks for listening.